in war in Ukraine. And we will repeat the same session tomorrow morning at the same time. My name is Veli-Matti Kärkkäinen, and I chair this session. I'm professor of systematic theology at Fuller and also have a teaching post at the University of Helsinki, my alma mater. In this session, we will have two prominent scholars who will give us presentations. I will introduce them in a moment. Let me first tell you about the schedule and plan of our session. Archimandrite Cyril Havron will speak first, and following the presentation, we will reserve a couple of minutes for questions of clarification. Not yet engaging the substance itself, but if there are any questions of clarification. Thereafter, Professor Rudolf von Sinner will speak, again to be followed by a couple of minutes of questions of clarification. Following these two presentations, we will devote the rest of the time for Q&A, questions, answers, discussions, plenary discussion, and you may use the chat function to present your questions. Time allowing, in order to prime the pump, I may also chime in as a chair, but hopefully all of us are active enough. So let me now introduce our esteemed speakers in the order of appearance. First of all, Archimandrite Cyril Havron is a professor of ecclesiology, international relations, and ecumenism at St. Ignatius College, University College Stockholm, a neighboring country to my native land, Finland. He also serves as the director of the Huffington Ecumenical Institute at Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles, which is near where I live here in Los Angeles. A graduate of the Theological Academy in Kiev and the National University in Athens, he completed his doctoral studies at Durham University. He has been chairman of the Department for External Church Relations at the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, first deputy chairman of the Educational Committee of the Russian Orthodox Church. Professor Havron has also served as a research fellow at Yale and Columbia Universities here in the US, as well as a visiting professor at the University of Münster in Germany. On top of a big number of other international scholarly connections and networks, Archimandrite Cyril is a worldwide expert on church life in Ukraine and Russia. I don't think we can have anyone more qualified to speak to us today. And then the second of our esteemed speakers is Professor Rudolf von Sinner, a Swiss naturalized Brazilian. He holds a doctorate in theology from Basel University and a habilitation, like the postdoctoral degree in systematic theology from Bern University. He teaches in the graduate program in theology and is also head of the department and in human rights and public policies at Pontificia Universidade Católica do Paraná in Brazil. He is also extraordinary professor at the Faculty of Theology of the University of Stellenbosch, South Africa. From 2014 to 22, Professor chaired the World Council of Churches Commission on Education and Ecumenical Formation. He also serves as a voluntary minister of the Evangelical Church of the Lutheran Confession in Brazil. Alongside active research, very active research, Professor von Sinner serves as the editor-in-chief of our International Journal of Public Theology. He's the author of 8 books, co-editor of another 24, and roughly 200 articles and chapters, and counting by date. Among many scholarly projects, he has published a chapter on ecumenical efforts to fruitfully and frustratingly, he says, use church channels in the war against Ukraine. So I wish to welcome all of you and certainly our wonderful speakers. And now I will give a chair and a platform to Archimandrite Cyril Havron.
Thank you so much, Veli-Matti. Thank you, kiitos, as you say in Finland.
You speak Finnish.
Well, a few words only. And thank you for these nice words. Also, I'm very glad to present in this meeting. It's a privilege and also for me an opportunity to bring some personal experiences of the war in Ukraine. also in the light of the public theology, because I believe public theology is something that can help us to interpret this war better than many other methods. I would even claim that without public theology, we could not fully understand this war. This is one of my claims. And that's why, for example, Rudolf invited me to his own university just when soon after the war began to make a keynote presentation. I'm very grateful to him, to Rudolf, for that invitation. So I believe it's important to keep talking about this war, also in the fora related to public theology. Let me share with you some slides. I need to send a request, it seems. Yeah. Now I
Yeah,
can.
now you should
Yeah,
have
now I
it.
can share it. Yeah. I see it. So I hope you can see it now.
Yes.
Ah, right. Good. I'm going to talk about Ukrainian agency, which I believe at this moment of negotiations about peace, at this moment of the war, has a prominent role, and it's directly relevant to the subject of public theology. And let me start with some personal stories. This was a trip which I made in summer 2023 with an ecumenical group. On the kind of left hand of for me, it's an evangelical pastor. He runs a mission in Zaporizhia, in the front zone actually. He runs a community and also a humanitarian aid mission. To the left from me, it's a Pentecostal friend who was a very close friend to Pope Francis, actually. He saw Pope Francis more frequently than any other Ukrainian, I would say. And he had some personal, really, connections and told a lot of personal stories to Francis. Became really Francis's friend, and he's a friend of mine. And we went together to the front line to help a community of elderly people who remained in the front zone town of Orikhiv. It's still a front zone town, just on the front line, and we brought them some humanitarian aid. Uh, we arrived there just a couple of days after a humanitarian hub was hit by two Russian gliding bombs. It was a hub where people, those who remained in this town, could receive hot food, take shower, or even watch TV, which is really a luxury. And most of those people were elderly people. It was and this hub was hit by the Russian bomb on the Sunday morning when those people came to receive aid, and many of them were killed. Around a dozen of them were killed. Just as today, probably you learned from the news, the Russians killed around 20 elderly people in the similar town like this one. They came to receive their pension, their kind of money, a payment for pension. They came to receive this pension, and they were hit by the Russian rocket, and 20 people were killed. So we visited. It means that it happens quite often in Ukraine, and we visited this place just a few days after it happened to this place. And there were some elderly people who did not go to this hub center, which was to that hub which was hit, which was destroyed. They stayed in their home, and this is their home, and that's why they survived. So this is the home where they live. It's a basement of their department house. They don't live upstairs because it's dangerous. They live underneath at the basement, which is like a shelter. And those are the conditions you see how that they live in. This is like their refectory and sitting room underneath, and this is the kitchen and storage. This is the bedroom. They live there now for 3 years, basically, after the war started. I haven't seen worse conditions, honestly. I've been to many places which very bad conditions. I haven't seen such conditions like this. And it's actually something that is still dangerous, because if there is a direct hit by a Russian mine or rocket to the house, they would be buried, all of them in this basement. But they still choose to stay there. That's another picture of the bedroom. They live essentially like a community there, a community of elderly people of around in their 70s, 80s, I would say. And these are these people. Of course, we were protected with our gears, like helmets and stuff, but they were unprotected, and well, because it's their life. And this is one of the members of this community. So what I want to say in connection with this community, we really ask them, why don't they want to leave this place? Because they're really urged, to leave this place, to go to Zaporizhia, which is a bit safer, or to go altogether somewhere else, like, I don't know, to Germany or elsewhere. And they say, no, we don't want to go. We want to stay here. We want to die here eventually if we have to, but we don't want to leave this place. And basically, whatever you tell them, whatever arguments you bring to them to leave this place, they just say no. We want to stay. It's our choice. And first, I was quite upset about what they were answering, and I also tried hard to convince them, as many people before me, to leave, to evacuate this place, to go elsewhere. But then I realized it's actually it makes some sense to me, because this is those people's choice. It's their life. They risk their life and they choose to live their life in this way. And I would say you can extrapolate this case to the entire Ukrainian people. All of us might have left the country altogether a long time ago. But most of us choose to stay. Most of us chose to come back to Ukraine after soon after the war started. Many left, as you know, probably around like 1/3 of the population left the country, around 10 million people. But then most of them came back to be exposed to the same risks of rocket attacks, of air raids that happen every night nowadays. And this is our choice. This is our agency. For me, this granny on this picture, it's almost like a personification of the Ukrainian agency, which I believe is something which is often underestimated by many. And by many, I mean it is underestimated, first of all, of course, by Vladimir Putin. I think his main goal is to destroy our agency, to make us subsume to his will, to his vision of Europe, of the world. And our agency is something that impedes him, really, that is really an obstacle to him. He doesn't believe that there is such a thing as a Ukrainian agency, just because he believes that there is no such a thing as Russian agency. He doesn't believe that the Russian people have their agency. He believes that only him, as a ruler of Russia, is entitled to have agency, and only him can decide for the Russian people, as he wants to decide for the Ukrainian people. So basically, the agency that you can see, like in this figure of this granny, she's in her, I think, in her late 80s, quite. So this is a main obstacle for Putin. This agency is also an obstacle to Trump, I would say, because Trump disregards and disrespects our agency in the same way as Putin does. He believes that we just need to obey, to subsume to his will, to bend to his will, to his vision of the peace formula for Ukraine. And it's what the fact that we have our own saying, we still keep our own agency, is very annoying to him. As I would say, the responses of this community were quite annoying to me when I urged them, to leave and to obey the common sense and their best interests, as I believe they had. But then I realized we really need to respect this, because this is about humanity. Humanity is impossible without agency. So if we take seriously humanity, then we need to take seriously agency. And I believe, therefore, that both Putin and Trump, they just don't take either humanity or agency seriously. And that's why we feel like a huge pressure in Ukraine, Now under the new kind of circumstances of Trump's administration and the negotiation regarding peace, both sides, both kind of actors in these peace talks, like in Anchorage and elsewhere, they share in common the disrespect and disregard to our agents. In contrast to our European partners, who most of them, not all of them, but most of them, they do respect our agency, and we appreciate it that's very much, and that's why we want now to partner more with the coalition of willing, as they call themselves. Of course, there are exceptions like Orban's Hungary or Fico's Slovakia. They have the same attitude. They deny us our own agency. They want us to to obey and to subsume ourselves. But I would say that this problem is wider than even Trump and Putin, because it seems that even some progressive narratives, they imply that we shouldn't or we don't have our own agency. I remember in the first weeks after the big war, Noam Chomsky came up with this famous formula that this war is fought by Americans until the last Ukrainians. By the way, this formula before Chomsky was articulated first by the Minister of Defense at the time, Sergei Shoigu of Russia. He said the same, that Americans fight this war against Russia until the last Ukrainian. And this was a very strange convergence of the narratives by Chomsky and Shoigu, very unlikely kind of similar people. They're very different people, but they converged surprisingly in the way how they treated our own agency. And this is basically one of those problems that we face also with some people on the progressive side of the, so to say, of the spectrum, political spectrum, when they say, look, Ukrainians are just pawns on someone else's chess desk. That the world is like a chess desk, and there are big players, and there is a game, and we are just pawns. We need to do this, or we need to do that. We need to yield, or we need to to bend essentially to someone's will, because they assume that we are people without own will, without our own understanding of what to do. The same applies, for example, to this rhetoric of NATO. A popular argument claims that, look, there was this expansion of NATO, and Putin became irritated, and he started this war, and the NATO is to be blamed. And in this explanation, I still wonder, where is our own will as a people of the Ukrainian people? Where do we stand? Do we at all have will, or we are just pawns that are played by the NATO or by Putin or I don't know who else? Because this explanation exactly lacks our own agency as well, and that's why we don't like this explanation either. For us, this NATO kind of narrative looks like this. I sometimes explain this like this: that look, imagine a harem of a sultan somewhere, or a kind of a sort of Oriental despot. With all due respect to Orient, we believe that we belong to the Orient, anyways. And some women from this harem want to escape, and they find shelter elsewhere. And then the harem, and they go and they escape and they find refuge in a shelter. And then the sultan comes to the owner of the shelter and says, "You stole my property. You stole my women. Give it back, or I will start a war against you." So in this kind of analogy, I would say that those who give this explanation of this NATO explanation to the war, I would say they ignore the will of the women who want to escape, the abuser, the systematic abuser. And those people in Eastern Europe, including Finland, which knew very much how abusive the Soviet Union could be, how Russia abusive could be, and tried every possible and impossible means to escape the abusive relationship. And now now everyone respects this kind of decision of Finland because Finland has proven that it has its own agency, now, even now by joining NATO eventually. So we are in a very similar situation. We are like those women in the situation of long centuries or centuries long abuse, and we found a way, we found a chance for us to escape. And it's not the NATO which is to be blamed. NATO is just a shelter. It's the abuser who is to be blamed. Why people want to escape him? Again, our history of agency is not new, I would say. The most important manifestations of the agency that we had were the so-called Maidans. And probably some of you know about the history of the Maidans. The Maidan, first of all, it's the name, an abbreviated name of the central square in Kiev. Its full name is the Maidan of Independence, the Square of Independence. Before that, it was the Maidan, in the Soviet time, it was the Maidan of the Revolution, by the way. And in the independence time, it was renamed to the Maidan of Independence. And I think both names apply to this place because the Maidan became the main place for our own revolutions even after the independence. And we had at least 3 Maidans. The first one in 1990, even before the proclamation of independence, the so-called student Maidan on the granite, because at that time the Maidan was still covered by the granite stones. And then another one was the Orange Revolution and the revolution in 2004, and then the Revolution of Dignity in 2013-14. I took this picture of the Maidan soon after the Revolution of Dignity, which we call the Revolution of Dignity, which was the Maidan of Euromaidan sometimes in 2013, 2014. I believe that Maidan was really an ultimate manifestation of our own agency because, again, Putin, still in power at the time, wanted to deprive us of our agency. He wanted to impose his own ruler, Yanukovych, on us. And Yanukovych actually had the same attitude. He didn't believe that people had any agency whatsoever. He suggested different stories and narratives, like, for example, that we were eating, I mean, those people who protested in the Maidan, they were eating drugged oranges. So his spouse, Lyudmila Yanukovych, made like public speeches where she claimed that, look, those people who came to the Maidan to protest, they were like drugged. And they were drugged because they ate oranges. And those oranges were like infused with some drugs, substances that essentially she claimed that people in the Maidan didn't have their own agency. They were forced to protest. And that was the belief of Yanukovych as well, because Yanukovych also believed that the people don't have any agency and they're not entitled. They're not even entitled to agency. In the same way as Putin believes about the Russian people, that the Russian people are not entitled to their own agency. And in the Maidan, we demonstrated that we are the people and we matter because our agency matters. And we have proven that it is stronger than anything else, that it's stronger than our state. There is always like this tension between the civil society, and by agency I speak about the civil society primarily, and the Ukrainian state, and any other aggressor that either internal or external that try to deprive us of our agency, be it Yanukovych or Putin. And on this picture you can see the slogan "Freedom is our religion." Probably it's a bit of overstatement, but still it expresses somehow this idea of agency that religion matters for us, because for most people, protesters in this Maidan, religion mattered, and this was probably the most massive collective prayer in Europe, at least, when those like hundreds of thousands of people who came to the Maidan, they regularly prayed together. They read Lord's Prayer together. They kneeled on the frozen pavement, and they prayed together. And still, they valued freedom very much, which was also a statement of public theology, I would say. So this is another picture that it's also my picture. I've taken it in the wake of the Orange Revolution 2004. I was much younger at the time, but still very much impressed. And for me, it was also one of the earliest manifestations of Ukrainian agency. in 2004 when people actually protested against the rigged elections, which we believe were stolen from us by Yanukovych. All those are, and this is again the pictures from Euromaidan that I took in 2013-14. So basically, the Maidans became the ultimate manifestations of the Ukrainian agency. So it's not a new thing for us. It's not something that came out of the blue, out of the scratch. It had a long story, and before the Maidans, the story of history of our resistance to the occupations goes back like to the World War II, for example, when the Ukrainian rebellion army fought against both occupiers, against the Nazis, because the Nazis occupied the entire Ukraine, as you probably know, and Ukraine was completely under the Nazi occupation. And there were forces in Ukraine, not just the Red Army, but the Ukrainian forces with the Ukrainian agency that fought against the Nazis, and also they fought against the Red occupation later on. That happened later. And that was also a manifestation of our agency, of the Ukrainian agency, that resurged after the independence and manifested itself in the Maidans. And I would say, I would claim that in a sense, the Ukrainian resistance to the Russian aggression is a continuation of the Maidans. So it's just like a Maidan which has become countrywide. That kind of engulfed the entire country. The entire country now subscribed to the Maidan, and continues, the same kind of resistance that we demonstrate in the Maidans. Of course, we now pay a much higher price. It takes much more effort, but for us, it's very similar. What we did in the Maidans, we just continue doing in resisting the Russian aggression. And in all those cases, what matters for us is our own agency. We've paid the highest price, I believe, to protect ourselves, and not just ourselves, but also to demonstrate that we matter. We are not just pawns. We are not just soulless and willless figures on someone's skateboard. For us, what is happening? It's not a skateboard, the chessboard. It's not a game. For us, it's a matter of survival, a matter of life and death, and more importantly, it's a matter of freedom. The war will start the moment we surrender, the moment we give up fighting. Then the hostilities will stop. Putin has promised it. But that's the thing, we keep fighting. And this is our choice. And I believe others need to respect the choice. As I finally respected the choice of those elderly people in the shelter, in this front zone town of Rikhiv, they chose to resist, chose to stay where they are. And now the entire Ukraine is like them. So thank you for your attention.